Welcome to Business Spotlight, where we share insights, reflections, and pearls of wisdom from local business owners. My name is Kerry James. I'm a business coach and facilitator. And today we have in the spotlight from Sedulo Limited, Chief Exec, Paul Cheetham. Good morning. Great to have you on, Paul.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Let's get stuck straight in with the first question. Sedulo, how long have you been in business and what do you specialize in, please?
So we set up in 2009. Actually, there was a version of Sedulo 05 to 09 with a business partner. That was the original setup, if you like, but that didn't work for various reasons. There's a lot of reasons why. It was just personal between the two of us, actually. So really, I class it as 2009 to now. So we're 14 years old about now, actually. And yeah, we set up. I'm an accountant, so we originally set up as an accountant. I started in industry. It's quite important that because I did 4 years in industry when I was qualifying. That was a totally different ball game than my next job, which was 4 years in practice. And there's a bit of a difference between being an industry accountant and a practice accountant, I learned in my early days. And I was so hands-on and part of the journey, if you like, when I worked in industry, that when I worked in compliance, in particular in my practice, in my second job, truthfully, it wasn't for me. So I decided I would set up Sedulo to offer industry type, hands-on, being on the journey type advisory work, but based in a practice setting. So that's why I set it up. As I say, there was a version 1, first of all, with a business partner, but 2009 onwards, it was mine. And 15 years later, we have 200 advisors. We have 4 cities. We do everything but insolvencies. So we look after a few $100 million on the stock market in our wealth team. We have a banking team. We have an M&A team, audit accounts, forensic accounting team, and your general bookkeeping, payroll, and management accounts. We also have just bought an IT business. We own a brand marketing agency. So we've moved just away. We're starting to look at more overall centralized functions that any business should need rather than just the finance aspect of it. Okay. So that's our structure.
So lots changed and happened since 2009, particularly in the last 3 years. In terms of interest rates, inflation, lockdown, etc., how have they all affected your industry, would you say, Paul?
Well, we've always wanted to be holistic, and that's really because we can put the client at the centre, and we can get 6 people in the same room from the same organisation focused on the client. And that really helped us in COVID because we have a mortgage division and they stopped. We've got a wealth team, and the markets crashed. We had a forensic team and the courts were closed. However, we had those people where we was able to set up a task force and move more of them into our banking team to do the COVID loans, or move more of them into our R&D division, because R&D was a big sort of enabler of the government to give back cash. So we had about 170 people at the time. And when we went into COVID, we didn't furlough anyone because we was able to be agile and flexible, really. So then what happened is, the banking, after the end of COVID, the banking team slowed down, but the wealth management team started to pick up. Mortgages came back again. Courts started to open again. Then all of a sudden, everybody shifted towards. So we was able to maintain. We grew. We doubled in size in the 3 years of COVID. As an organisation, we opened in Liverpool. It didn't stop our sort of strategy of that M62 corridor. So we doubled in size. It was difficult though, and for us, we're a culturally led business, and I would say that's been the bumpiest ride and the biggest roller coaster journey of the 3 years. But it didn't stop our strategy, which was always to double in size every 3 years.
And so, who would be your ideal clients now, then, Paul, and what would make them ideal?
So, and the food. So, in what I like, and hopefully what I'm trying to get across in the team members that we bring in, is I like being part of people's journeys, right? So sometimes we're part of athletes who are retiring, or we've got musicians and rap artists, and we're part of helping them build property portfolios, or fashion brands, or helping them run the label. And at the same time, it's on a personal, on a corporate, we were just talking earlier where you're based. I used to have a business there, and it was a marketing business, and we grew that from 2 members of staff. And then ultimately we ended up listing that on the stock market. So it's not about size, it's about ambition, if you like. I think there are more traditional accountants and advisors that are a better fit for people that are a bit more level. And those people that are ambitious, they need a lot more hand-holding. So I think those kind of clients are more, more our target. Now, what I would say is the industry's just moved. We're now a mid-tier firm. I think we're the number 70 or so in terms of size now in the UK. And the food chain has moved. I don't know whether you're aware, but a lot of the larger organisations, the top 10, are just culling really businesses less than 100 million quid. And so our strategy to double in the next 3 years is to move up that food chain by getting clients that are more 30 million to 100 million revenue, because they're being pushed away from a number of the top 10. That is our strategy. And now our ideal client is probably still want them to be busy, but we will have a balance now where we probably want a bit more of that 30 to 100 million revenue, where they need a little bit more audit, some international tax. That's how it's moved slightly in our strategy.
Okay, and you mentioned doubling every 3 years. What would be the main challenges to achieving that goal, would you say, Paul?
The challenge is always people, right? I mean, we're bringing in technology into the organisation. So we have a CTO now that builds and develops our own softwares. So that part we're dealing with, because you're always going to have a technology issue as today as you're growing. But by far, the biggest challenge is maintaining the kind of modern approach and the culture that we've got with people. And I think we're about 15 million run rate of turnover now. So 3 years ago, we was 6. There's a different caliber of management team that can run a 15 million pound business that can run one of 6. In 2026, we'll be a 30 million pound revenue business, and that will take a different caliber again. So it's quite difficult when you're growing. The growing pains are, in sport, and I run this organisation like a lot of sports organisations. We act for quite a bit in the sports industry. But it's quite normal to go through the leagues, if you like, and go through 2 divisions and realise your right back's probably belongs in the league that you've just left. And it's quite normal in sport to keep evolving and progressing the individuals. It's not quite that easy in the corporate world, is it? But in reality, you need to do that. So making sure you maintain happiness, if you like, and the culture that you want is always going to be the biggest challenge for us, because until we get these new technology products off, we sell time and we sell people, of course.
Very good. So you're clearly interested about and driven by the whole idea of a culture-led business. Just tell us a little bit more about that. How do you capture that? How do you embed that? And what are the key ingredients?
Well, we have a weekly happiness score. So I have we have a leadership club. We have a pulse happiness score for the staff. When we was going through what I would call cultural turbulence coming out of COVID, we're not a work from home organisation. We have 4 offices and I have 5 bars. I probably have 40,000 square foot of office space, but 20 of it is leisure space. Right, where people have meetings, and this was before WeWork, by the way, but I realised our Manchester office effectively was a WeWork 8 years ago, before I knew of all these kind of serviced offices that offer bars and, libraries. We've got libraries in here, we've got bars in every office, we've got rooftop terraces. We're not a work from home, we're a work from office. We think relationships in the office are important, and we think relationships at work externally to our clients is probably our biggest opportunity, if you like. So maintaining that was difficult. So we brought in, I was speaking to James Timpson of the Timpson Group, and he talked about a pulse happiness score, and we built it and brought it in the week after. And it's been one of the best things we ever did, because we get weekly feedback from our staff as to what's going right and what's going wrong.
So the pulse is that, just to be clear, Paul, sorry to interrupt, the pulse is the app that you use that people fill in every week. Is that how it works?
Yes, there is. Yeah. And we built it internally. We're about to build it slightly less clunky extra. It's done the job though, because we started at 6.6 happiness and last week was 8.3. We did have a staff conference last week, so that was more probably the best week we had. But we average about 7.6, which is roughly what Timpson's are, and they've been doing it for years, and we've been doing it for 12 months. So we're kind of in that what I class as world-class level of measurement, I guess, and that one being the pulse happiness. So yeah, it's not anonymous. So like we have the staff satisfaction survey every 6 months, and it's anonymous. The pulse one, I know what everybody's scores are every week, so I can reach out to if it's you and say, normally you're a 7-8, what's happening this week? And sometimes it's external. There's been an event, a dog's died, or a parent's ill, or a child. But at least we can cut them people some slack. If you don't know about that, you can't. Others, it's sometimes it's easy stuff like, I've had my laptop in the IT department for 3 weeks and it's still slow and my chair's broke. It's silly little stuff, but it's kind of those things that if you don't nip them in the bud, they become something bigger. So yeah, we measure our culture, more so our happiness, through a pulse happiness score. And we've just brought the same tool out, but for our clients. So we now have, on every email signature, a pulse client happiness score. So if we've got issues with clients, we don't wait until it festers and becomes something meaningful. They have every single piece of correspondence that goes out, we prompt them to give us a score.
Great. So turning soft cultural elements into hard metrics. That's great. So it's good to hear you learning from Timpson and becoming world class. If we move across, if you like, Paul, to your learnings and your lessons since becoming chief exec or starting the business back in 2009, if you were giving yourself advice now on that first day, what do you think the top 2 or 3 lessons would be that you've learned?
I think my first lesson would be, don't look too far ahead. I think sometimes you can get lost in, I do a lot in sport, right? And I get a lot of my ideology from the way sports teams become world class. And when you see they will have an objective, but they deal with it on a day-to-day basis. A friend of mine's just rode the Atlantic, right, solo from Leeds to, or they set off, not from Leeds, he's from Leeds, but they ended up in the Caribbean. I said, how did you do that? He broke the record for doing it. And he said, I took each wave, one wave at a time, right? And I thought, when the times were tough, and I think setting out a business is always going to have tough times. I think you can't think too far ahead. Sometimes it's just good to be on a plan and have an objective, but don't think too far ahead. Because if you'd have told me the hours that I would have had to work and how long it would have took to get to where we are today, if I genuinely knew that, I'm not sure I would have started the project, right? So don't think too far ahead. The second thing I've learned about sports people is, and I kick myself looking back, and we've achieved some really good growth, right? But I think we could have done it quicker if I'd have executed the decision making with more clarity and less emotion. And it's kind of like that. If it makes the boat go faster, do it. If it doesn't, don't. I wish that I would have executed some things with more clarity. And so I would say, in the early days, when you know the staff and you know the team, it's quite difficult to think anything but with relationships and emotion when you're making your decisions. From that perspective, I would do things with more clarity, and I'd do them. I'd make decisions quicker. And I think they're probably the two. And particularly in sport, they're ruthless. And I don't mean be nasty ruthless. That's not what I'm saying at all. Don't be that at all. But, if it makes the boat go faster, do it.
Very good. Excellent. Well, it's been a pleasure. I've got one final question for you, Paul, and that's in relation to any announcements or any offers. If viewers of the Business Spotlight are interested in talking to you, what might be a next step or an offer?
Well, I think the thing is we're interested in people's journeys. So you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, is where I get a lot, or my email address, is paul@sedulo.co.uk. People can always write in, and I'm quite happy to spend time with people. I'm quite happy to give time up in order to learn about people's journeys, because you just never know where that might take you. As I say, I learned at the very start a really strong lesson, which is don't be too picky and sort of boundaries about what clients you do and don't want, because a two-man band in the end probably turned into over £1 million of fees for us, you know, in the marketing business. So, you know, we don't charge for initial discussions of a couple of hours. By all means, reach out if you're on the journey and feel like you need more, as I say, holistic hand-holding. It's that kind of advice we want. What we want, we want long-term relationships, and so if anybody wants to reach out and email me or link into me, do so. And I'm quite happy to give time just to see if there's anything that we can mutually help one another with. We have 2,000 clients now, so if somebody comes to me with something, we will have some people in our organisation, that in our client base, that has been, if somebody wants to open a restaurant or they've got a restaurant, they want to roll it out, we will have 5 or 10 people who rolled out restaurants. You know, if somebody's getting close to selling, we'll have people who've been through that process, and we try to bring communities together, really. So by all accounts, if anybody wants to reach out to me, better to do it through LinkedIn. Or if not, I've just given my email address. I'm quite happy to spend some time with people.
That's great. Well, we'll put those details together with this interview. All big businesses were one-man businesses once, hey? So that's a good lesson in itself. Paul, it's been a pleasure. Thanks ever so much for your time and your input and your lessons, and all the very best with Sedulo.
No problem. Thank you.